How many of you think you know what a chicken looks like? Oh, I bet you're all out there saying, I know what a chicken looks like. I've seen them cross the road heaps of times. Well, have you ever seen a chicken that looks like this? You will have if you've ever read Lee Hobbs's Mr. Chicken books. Yeah? So there's Mr. Chicken, and then Mr. Chicken goes on lots of adventures. And in the book we're going to read today, he goes all the way to London. Can I tell you something about Mr. Chicken? He almost never got published. Do you know that I have met Lee Hobbs? I have. Oh, I've met Lee Hobbs. And he even signed something for me. Look at this. Just a second. Oh, Lee Hobbs. And you know what? He didn't draw that picture. My daughter drew that picture. And she's probably about the same age as you. Mr. Chicken's sort of easy to draw, yeah? But Lee Hobbs had sent his manuscript, which is just the words for Mr. Chicken, to so many publishers, nobody wanted to make it into a book. And he told the story of how he went to post the manuscript. He was standing next to the post box with his manuscript, with the story of Mr. Chicken in an envelope. He was about to put it in, to post it, and he said to himself, this is it. If this publisher doesn't want to publish Mr. Chicken, that's it. I'm not sending it to any more people. And luckily, that publisher, Allen and Unwin, liked Mr. Chicken, and they made Mr. Chicken into a book. And then they made lots of Mr. Chicken books. Yeah. So this is Mr. Chicken Goes to London, written and illustrated, another clever person who can do both, by Lee Hobbs, and published, thank you, by Allen and Unwin. Mr. Chicken couldn't wait another minute. So he finished his breakfast, collected his camera, and flew to London. Because you can do that when you're a chicken. London was his favourite city in all the world. Here he is. Maybe some of you have been to London. Wonder if you saw Mr. Chicken while you were there. After drifting over Regent Street, he floated down through the clouds, past the Houses of Parliament, before landing ever so gently on the River Thames. Luckily, his camera was waterproof, and the Savoy Hotel, where he always stayed, was just around the corner. Splash. Good morning, said Mr. Chicken. I have a reservation. Certainly, sir, said Maurice, the man at the desk. Well, welcome back. Your favourite room is ready. That is not a good English accent. I'll try to get it as we read the book. Here he is. The Savoy is a very fancy hotel, so it's just the right place for Mr. Chicken. When in London, Mr. Chicken stayed in the River View Deluxe room, where he could look at London while enjoying breakfast in bed. It was still early, so he ordered a full English breakfast, then planned his day and made a list. There's lots of things to see in London, so you have to make a list. Mr. Chicken loved looking up facts and figures about his favourite city. He never got sick of learning new things. Later outside, a lost, teary tourist asked for directions. Mr. Chicken was happy to help, for it made him feel like a real Londoner. Does he look happy to help? He's looking a bit more happy there. First on the list was a visit to a special friend. Whenever he was in town, Mr. Chicken called on Her Majesty the Queen. Of course, he always rang first, so that Her Majesty had time to do some extra baking. There he is in the phone booth. Look at all the people waiting. Oh, Mr. Chicken, how lovely to hear from you, the Queen said. Do pop in for morning tea. And so he did. At Buckingham Palace, Mr. Chicken was on his best behaviour. He took extra care not to break the furniture. After morning tea, the Queen suggested stepping onto the balcony. The view is absolutely marvellous, Mr. Chicken, as you well know. I'd love to, Your Majesty, said her gracious guest. It's Buckingham Palace. They're going to step out onto the balcony. Oh, it was very nice indeed. However, Mr. Chicken had to keep an eye on the time. He had a lot to do before lunch. Look at him up on that balcony. And all the people waving. You might have seen on the TV every now and then the Queen standing on the balcony with her family. It's a very special place to stand. Mr. Chicken's a pretty special visitor. After the royal visit, Mr. Chicken checked his list in St. James's Park. He'd seen the changing of the guard before, so he decided to climb up St. Paul's Cathedral. Then he explored the Tower of London before crossing Tower Bridge. By now, Mr. Chicken was getting behind in his schedule as tourists kept wanting him to take their photo. Even though Mr. Chicken was a VIP, very important person, should really be a VIC, shouldn't it? Very important chicken. Mr. Chicken liked to blend in. He queued at the bus stops and moved about on double-decker buses, just like ordinary Londoners do. If he was in a hurry, though, he drove the bus himself. Imagine catching a bus and seeing Mr. Chicken driving it. I don't know if I'd get on. Of course, if Mr. Chicken was in a real hurry, he caught the Underground, which are the trains in London. They all go underground. He enjoyed riding on the escalators, especially if they took him to his favourite spot. Oh, the people. They don't look very happy to be stuck behind Mr. Chicken. For instance, Trafalgar Square, where Mr. Chicken sometimes spied on Lord Nelson standing atop his column. Today, as there was room for two and Lord Nelson didn't mind sharing, Mr. Chicken joined him to take in the view. He didn't stay long, as his tummy told him it was nearly time for lunch. Though he did manage to squeeze in a visit to the National Gallery. No touching, please, sir, said a voice from behind. Pardon me, said Mr. Chicken. With all that sightseeing, Mr. Chicken had to keep up his strength. Luckily, his good manners and VIP pass got him into a very smart place for lunch. More tea, sir, said the waiter. Make it cake, please, answered the VIP. Oh, yes, Mr. Chicken looks so fancy there, doesn't he? Fits right in. Straight after lunch, he was back on a bus. Mr. Chicken wanted to see everything. He even played I Spy on the London Eye. Look at him. He's got a whole pod to himself. Isn't he lucky? He is having fun. In fact, Mr. Chicken didn't stop until he found a place to perch at Piccadilly Circus. As usual, Mr. Chicken had overdone his London sightseeing, and by late afternoon he'd become much too excited. A short rest was needed back at the Savoy so he could freshen up. In no time at all, Mr. Chicken looked as good as ever and was ready for dinner. Oh, yes, look at him. He looks beautiful, doesn't he? Vegetables, sir? Yes, please, answered Mr. Chicken. Lots. A meal down in the Crypt Cafe of St. Martin's in the Fields was a must for Mr. Chicken. He enjoyed it so much he was nearly late for the opera. In the middle of the first act, Mr. Chicken remembered he had to be somewhere else. By 9:15 exactly. Got everyone sitting there in the theatre? Mr. Chicken fits in just lovely, doesn't he? Doesn't stand out at all. He hurried down to Whitehall to the clock tower near Parliament Square as Big Ben struck 9. At 9:10, Gerard, the guard, checked Mr. Chicken's VIP pass. Yes, it's yours all right, sir, he said, and waved him in. Up, up, up climbed Mr. Chicken. Tick, tick, tick went the giant clock. At exactly 9:15, Mr. Chicken felt as if he were right inside the beating heart of London. There's Big Ben. That's a huge clock in the middle of London. He's going right up to the top. And that night, at exactly 9:15, Mr. Chicken was right in the heart of London. Look at him. Do you think they're his two eyes? Later, back at the hotel, sleep was impossible. Not that it mattered very much, for Mr. Chicken didn't want to waste a minute. So he's gone back to bed, but he can't sleep. So, as there was a full moon, he got up and went for a walk. At midnight, Mr. Chicken listened to Big Ben strike 12. Bong, bong, bong. At last, he felt like he had London all to himself. In the morning, it was time to leave, but not before a full English breakfast. As always, Mr. Chicken said goodbye to London from Waterloo Bridge, and as usual, he shed a tear. It's a bit sad to be leaving London. Not a big tear, of course, but Mr. Chicken knew he would soon be back. Off he goes, flying back to his home. Sailing away. That's the end of the story. So Mr. Chicken is funny, mostly because the drawings are funny, aren't they? Look at his little hat. Yeah? He really doesn't look like any chicken I've ever seen crossing the road before.